Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. People like me, Michelle Kane with Voice Matters, and my wonderful co-host, Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro. Hey, Karen, how are you today?
Hi, Michelle. I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Doing well, in spite of
Yeah.
whatever's happening by the time this airs, but, we're keeping on.
Yeah. As we're sitting here today, it's still the month of love and it's Black History Month. And so we have
Yes,
fun, good things to celebrate.
that's right.
But we also have the reality of our lives to deal with.
We do. Yes, we do. Sometimes I feel like I'm two people at once, but hey, that's it. Why not? Why not? Just roll with it. But one thing we did want to talk about today is actually speaking of when trouble comes knocking, right? If your brand is faced with a situation that is not the best. I have a business in my area that's faced with a serious situation where allegations have been brought of child abuse and worse, and how new ownership is taking steps to separate themselves, but really it's a public relations nightmare, as they say.
Yeah.
And how can we be helpful to brands when they're trying to do the right thing in the midst of a situation that they were truly blindsided by as well as those. So yeah, it's been interesting times in the community, and I really feel for the new ownership. They're trying to do the right things, and public opinion has not been kind to them, and I understand with the severity of what's happened. No one condones that. No one does. But just really how can you help people move up and on, or what is the best way to go? So it's a fun
Yeah,
topic today, kids.
it is. I mean, what you said, that is at the scale of one of the more serious things that can happen to a brand. But I think that we see varying degrees of this,
Yes.
routinely these days. And navigating this in an era where we have seemed to have lost our ability for reasoned thinking and nuance. We're
Correct.
all or nothing. And so we're all in or we're all out, and we don't stop to critically think through this. So in your situation, this particular brand, because they had people that were involved that were guilty parties, the stench of it,
Yeah.
falls on the entire brand when it wasn't everyone involved, and
Right.
they've already separated themselves from the offenders once this came out. But you still have to navigate this as a brand, and your PR team has to navigate this and be able to message this correctly.
Right. Right. And it's definitely one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know where they are. I mean, I'm not on their team, but just thinking things through, just, anytime something happens, it doesn't have to be this serious, of course, but, our PR brain goes, ooh, how are they handling it? Are they doing the right thing? Are they handling it well? And I think, they're doing whatever they need to do to both protect their customers and the business. It's their livelihood. And I know livelihoods don't compare to damaging someone's soul and psyche and body.
It does not.
Doesn't.
And I'm sure that the brand
But
acknowledged the
yes.
horror of this situation that they were not responsible for. And let's face it,
Right.
we can vet, and everyone should. You should vet people that are connected to your brand. In this case, it's a
Oh,
smaller
yeah.
business with, ownership. So vet, but things are not always going to come up when you're vetting things that were
Oh,
performed in secret crimes that were not, they weren't charged. You don't know until when it becomes public, and then you have to take
right.
action on it. But in some
Right.
cases, we see, again, our inability to have nuances. We see, for example, if somebody does or says something publicly that is hateful or just,
Mm,
inappropriate, then the internet will find who they're employed by and report it. And then that person gets fired.
yeah.
In some situations, I question that, because again, are we taking a lapse in judgment one moment in time and saying, you lose your job because you made an unfortunate decision when you were drinking at a game, or you got mad and you said something that you probably wanted to take back the moment that you said it. You were basically a human being and you made an error. Or is this a pattern that really does not align with our company values? We don't have, and I get it, brands don't even have the opportunity these days to try and work through that, because the internet is there with fire sticks and shotguns saying, kill them, get rid of them right now. And so there's this pressure
Right.
to
Yeah.
not even be able to work through situations, because I think that you have to take each situation in context and you have to look at it individually, but we just don't do that anymore. We don't have the luxury of doing that.
So true. So true. I mean, and it only speaks to the depth of the polarization of our society. You have to either be A or B. You can't be, well, there's no room for all of the above in the multiple choice test of life. And not only it's sad, but it's not productive. None of that's productive,
Yeah.
and it just really doesn't serve anyone well.
Yes. And you make a really good point, because as PR professionals, the loudest voices are the extremists on either side of an issue.
Yeah,
They're the
right.
loudest. They're not necessarily the majority of our audience, but they're the loudest voices. And so we tend to have to navigate around the loudest voices, when a lot of people really are like, they're not black, they're not white, they're gray. They're right in the middle. There's more people in the middle. That
Yep.
is the majority of our audiences, but they
Yeah.
get overlooked
Yeah.
because that audience is sitting there going, I don't know what to think. Like, this
Right.
is crazy on both sides. And here I
Yeah.
am, just,
Or they're just living their lives and they're fully unaware.
yes,
Because we do have to remember, and hey, I just because in the course of my work, I spend a lot of time on social, more than I care to. And you realize not everybody's there. In fact, most people aren't there. It's usually a lot of the usual suspects are spending time online. And is it a place to amplify your messaging? Of course it is, but it's not the entire society. So, I mean, that's something to be aware of. And I think, one thing we lament the loss of in so many ways is context. Anytime you see something, your next step should be, let me check out the context of either what was said or the situation or what we know for now, and make a decision based on what, the entirety of what is true in this moment, because that's all you have to go on. That's all you can do. And that's definitely what I've seen this brand attempting to do. And, people that they might have lost, well, just keep on trucking. Maybe they never even were customers to begin with. That's what I wonder in this situation. I'm like, did y'all ever even go there? Like, I get it. It's awful. But, more generally speaking, we can't keep shooting from the hip.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it speaks to more than ever. And we, public relations professionals have been saying this forever, because it's baked into, our core values, that you really have to make these deposits of trust in your audience. And the way you continue to bank that in the best of times. And that means building an infrastructure based on your values, your mission, your vision, making sure that infrastructure is strong at every touch point, making sure these are not just words that you say or put on your website, but that are actually lived in your organization, and staying true to yourself, and then staying true to your audience and winning their trust day after day after day. Because when you continue to make those deposits, when something comes your way, because it's not if, it's a when, your audience has that deposit of trust in you and are more likely to back you. Will you lose people in a crisis? You absolutely will. But so, crisis planning is not just having a proactive crisis communication plan and practice scenarios. It's also doing the work day in and day out of being authentic, of operating with ethics and integrity, and building trust every single day with your audience by your actions, not just your words.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. That's why that is so very important because, like in this situation, you never know what's down the road. God forbid. You don't know what's going to come at you that you would have, that you never saw coming.
Yeah.
And I just think it's good business, right? It's just good business to be a good person, to be a good entity, to just, don't break that modicum of trust, to always act in good faith.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, that doesn't mean that we're going to have monolithic brands that all
No.
do and say and believe the same things. There are going to be brands that are who they are, but they know who they are and they build that trust with their audience. And their
Right.
audience may be people that we do not agree with.
Right.
We could not agree with an organization and their mission. That's okay. But if they're true to who they are and they never veer from that, and they have amassed that trust in their audience, that's all that matters, because no brand should try to be all things to all people, because it
Right.
never, ever works. And that's when you waver. And we're seeing a lot of wavering these days. We're
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
people get tossed to and fro from the public outcries and by trends, and they don't have an anchor point because they just went wherever the wind blew them.
Yeah, it's so, so true. And, I think about why is that? Why are people so quick to make a snap judgment? And I think because I think it's probably easy on ourselves, easy on our psyche. It's just, okay, let me just deal with that and then move on to the next thing because I don't have time for this.
Yeah. And the
And
internet spreads that stuff so fast.
oh, totally, totally. And makes you think, oh, well, maybe I should, blah, blah, blah. And then, depending what it is, sometimes you don't have to form an opinion about everything. How about that? How about you just go about your day and, if it's not harming anyone, okay, fine.
At least here in the United States, we could use a heavy dose of civility.
Oh.
I have heard the Germans talk about their, civility
Mhm.
and how free speech doesn't mean that there's no boundaries. But here in the United States, we believe that if we put a boundary at all, then we're
Yeah.
not allowing a democratic society. And it's interesting how that's playing out. But
Yeah.
yeah, we saw this during the Super Bowl. I guess there was an influencer program from the non-soda company Poppy,
Mm.
and they sent these soda machines to these influencers, and then the price got super inflated, and everybody went off saying, with the price of eggs what they are and people suffering, and you're sending $10,000 machines to Poppy. And then Olipop, who actually is my preferred of those two brands, jumped in on it on social and did the math, except the math was wrong because the machines were not 10,000. And it's just one more example of how a piece of information gets out. Nobody bothers to fact check it. Nobody bothers to give the brand an opportunity to respond and say, whoa, this was our motive. Was it probably a poorly executed campaign? Yeah, it wasn't the best decision. But I also believe brands should get to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And the price tag wasn't what they said. And they had like a method to their madness. I think it was kind of like when Coke did the happiness things years ago with
Yeah.
machines. They had a vision and a plan. It didn't work. It fell flat. And you sort of, it angered people in these times. Lesson learned. But the misinformation was out there and people ripped them to shreds, and influencers ripped them to shreds. And the whole thing was kind of sad because it just shows that we just have zero tolerance these days.
And I have to wonder, it's my not quite a minor in psychology talking, if that's due to other things that we feel like we can't control in our world. So we lash out at the things that don't really matter. I mean, that's a whole other topic to talk about, but that definitely could be part of it. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. They're just not reacting over, oh my gosh.
I agree. And I want to acknowledge for every public relations professional out there that we also are human beings who live in this world with all of the things that are going on. And we have to navigate those on a personal level while still keeping our heads about us and doing our job. And so we see you and we know that it's difficult to do the
Yes.
right things in this environment that is really toxic and chaotic. But
Yeah.
here's the inspiration. Just like we counsel brands to build trust, to do the ethical thing, to stay true, that applies to us as well. You kind of have to, put on those blinders to some degree to the world around you and keep doing exactly what you know to be right. Because at the end of the day, your anchor point is the thing that's going to keep you from being tossed about in this sea of chaos and toxicity. Do the right thing,
Hmm.
stick to your values, make right decisions, counsel your clients in the correct way, keep making those great decisions, and we will all get through this. And you know what? In the process, hopefully, we can actually change and have an impact on our little parts of society and maybe bring back context, nuance, civility. That would be
Yes.
amazing.
Yes. Wouldn't it though? It's interesting because I question myself of why am I so invested, right? In making sure people know the right thing and the facts. It's like, well, duh, you're in PR. It's what you do. You try and inform your public of what is right and true. And I don't say right as in only what I think is correct. I mean facts and
Yeah.
truth. And I'm a firm believer in the greater good because we all,
Yes.
rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes. We can do
So if you,
this. I love
yeah,
that. That's a perfect
yep,
note to end on.
it is. So we hope this was helpful to you. I'm sure you're faced with, these sticky situations as well. I hope this has been a boost for you. And if you have found it of value, please do share it around. Give us a review. We would love that wherever you listen to podcasts. And please do hit us up at soloprpro.com. Not only is there great content, but we'd love to hear from you as to what you'd like us to cover. And until next time, thanks for listening to That Solo Life.